So, first question again?
Yeah.
Okay, what is your name?
Jason Oliver Nixon.
John Loecke.
And where did you guys go to school?
I went to a small school in Maine called Colby, and I was a Spanish literature major. My parents said, why didn't you do economics? But I loved the liberal arts degree. So.
Excellent. Good job.
And I went to Iowa State, which was a school of 25,000 undergrad, and majored in journalism and graphic design.
Oh, excellent.
Well, that kind of answers our next question, so I'm going to ask the other one. What are some of the careers you have had briefly described to us? What working in those jobs were like?
I think John and I very much look at life as a circuitous path. A to B to C to D doesn't work for us. We're very much about A to F to Q to R, but it's very much, there is a thread. I started off at Condé Nast Traveler right out of college. I was always a magazine head, so I went to magazines and I was there. Then I was an editor at Photos, which is the kind of gold standard in travel guides. I took a year off. I won a James Beard scholarship, so I went to cooking school and was doing a lot of food writing. I fell into a job as a producer at E, and so I was one of the launch producers on E! True Hollywood Stories for E.
Oh, wow.
Then I became a producer at the Food Network very early on, when you were never quite sure if the gerbil wheel, if someone had plugged us in the morning. It was just when Emerald was hitting. Then I started a group of magazines called Niche Media with my publisher, and that was Gotham, Los Angeles Confidential, Hamptons, Michigan Avenue, Capitol File, Aspen Peak, Boston Common. Ran those for about 9 years. Went off to do our own thing. John and I started our interior design business. So we launched Four Seasons Hotels magazine, and have been the global lifestyle editor at Delta Sky magazine for about 6 years. And we have our interior design and product team going strong. But John, let me turn over to you. John, you should start from now on.
Well, my background is not as complex as yours, I guess.
That's complex. But it was all media. It was all media. There was a media thread.
I've been interested in design since I was a kid, and I, grew up in a house where my mother was always redecorating, my dad was always building. So I always thought somehow that might be something I would do, and I thought maybe architecture, but then when I got to college, I realized architecture was a very complicated, cutthroat kind of program, and
Lots of math.
lots of engineering and math that
Not so much.
wasn't really my thing. So I kind of explored around and ended up in graphic design, which was not something I had ever thought that I would do. Nor was journalism really something I ever thought that I would do. But just discovered that they both kind of worked together, and knowing one helped with the other, and they were both creative. And but then I never thought that I would end up working at magazines in New York. And I think just by chance I got into an internship program with the Magazine Publishers of America, which is the big organization that everybody in the publishing world belongs to, and ended up at House Beautiful, and decided that, I liked it, and I liked New York, and it just seemed like a good fit.
Well, then you worked where else? You were the home editor at Parents
I was the
magazine.
home editor at Parents. The funny thing is, going to Iowa State, one of the biggest publishing companies in America is right next door, Meredith, which does Better Homes and Gardens and all those magazines. I couldn't for the life of me get hired at Meredith until I moved to New York, and then Meredith, in their office in New York, decided to hire me to work at Ladies Home Journal, which I'm glad that happened, because I've lived with it and probably still be in Iowa, but it's kind of funny how those things happen, like you think.
Well, then I think that, we both decided, we were writing about everyone else's worlds, and we had learned how to style shoots, and we learned how to produce, and we're storytellers. And so I think it was that we wanted to own our business. And so I think that the interior design business was something that grew out of both our passion for interiors, and as well as our kind of entrepreneurial tendencies. And we had both learned how to, or especially I think I had to learn how to build a business, starting that magazine company, taking it from 2
Well, I think
to 175.
Yeah, I think had I thought about, do I want to be an interior designer when I was in college and gone through an interior design program, which I don't know that I would have ended up being an interior designer.
I think that having a very liberal arts background and having our hands in whether it's magazines or television or strictly editing brought something to the table. I think that we're still very much, the brain is, we're storytellers. And whether we're telling a story through the lens of a magazine, whether we're telling a story through the lens of Pinterest, Facebook, or Twitter, whether we're telling a story through our interior design shop or through our interior design clients, it's bringing that brand to life. It's bringing, so if you're designing your homes, it would be bringing your brand experience to life in your home so that it looks, feels, and tastes exactly like you want it to feel. And so I think that magazines were the great training grounds for us to say, hey, how can you tell a story? How do you create the great headline and deck that brings the person in? And then after you read the story, you say, wow, wasn't that a great read, and had great visuals. And that's very much what we think we bring to whether it's our products that we have on Home Shopping Network, whether it's the store that we're doing in downtown High Point, whether it's our clients that we're doing projects right now that range from Los Angeles to London to Florida. So it's very much bringing that eye and that point of view, and very much kind of connecting the dots between food, fashion, design, and travel, and telling that story through the lens of our clients' homes or products.
Well, I think at the end of the day, design is an experiential business, and I think the more you experience in life and the more experiences you have, the better you're able to understand what someone else is trying to have you do for them, but also the better you're able to bring ideas to the table that can help them achieve what it is they're trying to do. And I think that's kind of where I'm glad I didn't study it as an academic degree, because I feel like I maybe wouldn't have gotten some of that. I think it's about life experiences and how you take those experiences and
it's also about understanding the history, really knowing the background of interior design, who the great designers were, and not just the new, but it's also really having that foundation in history and the education and the learning experience. I think that we're very much, we love learning, we also love educating. We look at design as a dialogue, and it's about having a conversation, whether it's a product, whether it's a room. That's why we love being on Home Shopping Network, because not only are we creating great product, but we're able to educate the consumer about how this pillow or how this bedding will make their world that much more magical. And it's not just dumping product into the marketplace because there's so much product out there, but it's actually having that dialogue with the consumer and saying, hey, we're going to educate you. We're going to explain to you how this is really transformational. And it comes with a story, it comes with authenticity, it comes with us attached to it, telling you how to use it. So we're almost not only creating a great product, but we're giving you permission and explaining how to use the product.
So you would definitely say that design, or when you're studying design, it's good to know where past designs have been in order to further understand where it should go in the future, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that applies to anything, not just design. But I think you have to understand your history, to kind of figure out where it is you're going.
Everything, whether you're in food or you're in communications, or how did you speak to the consumer 100 years ago versus how do you speak to the consumer now? And some of those media are still there, but then they're all the new platforms that you have to understand as well. So I think you have to understand kind of the past to move forward.
That's excellent. And tell us a little bit more about Madcap Cottage.
Madcap Cottage was started about 5 years ago, and it is a multi-pronged entity. It's an interior design firm. It's a product development firm. We do a lot of public speaking. We have our vintage arm, so we sell a great deal of product that we pick up around the world, that we tweak, we reupholster, we refinish on portals such as Slane and First Dibs, which are speaking to a global audience. We have a pillow line. We've done 3 books. We're doing a new book that our agent is shopping around. That's going to be really fun. And we're very much about building an engaged community. I think that if you follow us through social media, you see that we're very much about it's a fun ride, and we want you to join the ride with us, and we're going to educate you through that process, and that process can be high or low. If you're looking at Facebook yesterday, I was in the drive-through line at Hardee's in my U-Haul, and then had a very swanky dinner last night in a Trim the Turk sport coat. I think that's our life, and I learned just as much of being in Hardee's as I do, having a great dinner with a designer. I think that life is about keeping your eyes open, and I think that for us, it's very much about bringing a worldview, whether it's our the shop that we're just opening downtown High Point, or when Kohler asked me to come out and lecture on brand building.
Well, I think it's like anything anymore. You have to be, your business has to be diverse. Like you can't just be one tiny thing. Yeah, I mean, as we saw with everything kind of went haywire in 2008, like if you were just
about having multiple revenue streams, and they all have to tie off a core brand entity. And for us, if we were to define our brand, I would say it's about color, it's about pattern, it's about being brave, it's about being bold. If you kind of what our metaphorical brand book was, there were certain words that would leap to the forefront, but that would hold true whether I was designing this chair or someone's home or writing a book or producing a magazine story for Delta Sky. A feature I did last month on Tokyo that I think it was, I asked 12 tastemakers to talk about what they loved in Tokyo, and it wasn't just, it was their favorite restaurants, their favorite hotels, and the little secrets in Tokyo. So to go down that street and turn left, John and I are not about the expected, we're about the unexpected, but we present it in a way that is sophisticated, but it's also real. We all have kids. You guys don't have kids. But we have dogs and kids, and they have toys in the living room, and that's okay. And that's how people live. And the home shouldn't be camera ready. There needs to be that idea that if you have a dog and they like to sleep on the couch, well, you have to put a fabric on the couch that they can live on too.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did the name Madcaps come about? How'd you come up with that name?
Well, you kind of.
Yeah, it was originally it had been John's name. John's last name, Loecke, is a little hard to pronounce, and I think that we were running the business together, and we wanted something that really defined our brand.
Mm-hmm.
And Madcap is a throwback adjective. It's very much a 1920s adjective. It's that idea that it's very whimsical, life is whimsical, it's fun, that Madcap is kind of throw care to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, in Cottage, we did some kind of research into other words that relate back to home and
back to us.
And back to us. And Cottage, in our take, is a state of mind. It's not. It could be a Newport cottage. It could be a cottage in
Palm Beach Cottage, it could be an apartment in New York City.
But for us, it's a word that means comfortable, livable,
Intimate.
Mm-hmm.
So it means a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Putting those two, and that's also one of the most searched terms on Better Homes and Gardens. So it's a term that speaks to the general populace. But I think putting those two words together is this idea that it's kind of a cozy cottage where you might have a cocktail too many, and life is really fun, and you crank up the legally, and you kick up your heels.
I mean, and when you look at design, there are two. You often run into people, especially when you get to a certain price point, where you're designing these things that are not livable, they're not realistic, they don't ever end up using them. It's sort of the idea like you build this gigantic kitchen with high-end kitchen appliances,
And they don't really cook.
and you never set foot in there.
Or a living room that nobody actually lives in. So why have a living room? Turn it into, that's why I think that great rooms off kitchens are so what we use nowadays, because people don't, but we're saying make your less frequent rooms, make your occasional rooms more frequent. Use them.
Right.
So I don't want to create a living room that looks like a museum.
Use the space.
Use the space.
Otherwise,
And it should be fun.
right. Otherwise, why have the space?
Right.
We're going to use it.
Otherwise, why'd you get a house that big? Or
Right.
Yeah. If you find yourself living in a pool house, well, that's a real problem, because you really, actually what you really want is more of a cottage-sized space.
Talk to us what separates Madcap Cottage from everybody else in your mind.
Big words.
Yeah.
Wow. Well.
Well, I think a big part of it is this idea that what we do is, okay, so you have designers like Kelly Wersler, or you have designers like Jonathan Adler, and you instantly know when you look at something that one of them did, that they did it. I mean, there's a certain, it's not a formula necessarily, but there's it's sort of like a one design kind of setup in that there's always.
Well, let me take that to another level, not to name names, but it's the idea that if you want a certain brand, hire that brand. We would, if we did your home, Patrick, it would look like you, where we might push some boundaries. We might add a little more color, a little bit more pattern.
I'm told I need that in my life.
When your ship comes in, remember your High Point friends. But I think it's very much we're very much reflective of the brand of our client. But if for example, if you want a Louis Vuitton, you'll hire Louis Vuitton, because you're not going to get one size fits all.
Right.
You're not going to get. You wouldn't walk in and say, "Oh, Madcap Cottage designed this house." It's more of a wink, wink, nod, nod. It would very much cater to exactly what you were looking for, and it wouldn't be just kind of a brand name. So.
Okay. I guess that's what I would say. I would say if you look at our portfolio and you look at projects we've done, there's really nothing that would necessarily jump out at you and say, that's a Madcap Cottage space, in
Right.
the sense that there may be some things with the way we've used color, the way we've used pattern, that would indicate that if you knew our work. But it's not, we haven't branded ourselves as a name brand in the way that some designers have, where you know that if I go to this designer, this is exactly what I'm going to get.
And we've done everything from the most modern apartments in Los Angeles to a bungalow in Tampa, Florida, to a color-packed, grade 2 listed mill outside of London. So it really ranges that we're not just one certain look. We do traditional, we do transitional, modern, you name it.
That's excellent.
So
Now you said that you guys relocated High Point. You were originally from New York. What were some of the locations like? Because I know that you guys now have an apartment in London, and you guys travel to New Orleans a lot. What's it like going to all these different places?
we're students of the world, and we're very lucky. We love going to Des Moines, Iowa, where John is from, just as much as we love being in London several times a year. In the last year, we've been to Moscow, India, China, Maine, and everything in between. I think that it's about finding, you can find fun wherever you are.
Yeah.
And I think that, High Point is a city that's on the move, it's in a state of flux. I have more fun here than I do in New York.
Really?
I find it easy, I find it
Well, it's
accessible.
easier.
How so?
Well, I think from a
Design
point of
as
view,
well.
Mhm.
I mean, everything is still here.
Within 3 miles of our office in downtown High Point, we have furniture restorers, manufacturers, pillow people, decorative painters, resources that we would never have had in New York City.
Mhm.
So I think on a business platform, the capabilities of High Point are off the charts.
And
It's
I
amazing.
think High Point is affordable, unlike New York. So if we were trying to do what we're opening on Church in New York, well, it wouldn't be street level. It wouldn't be 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, I mean, we're paying very limited, very little money for a 2,000 square foot space down on High Point, where actually every editor, every buyer in the world comes through twice a year.
Wow.
And it's how do you take High Point and turn it into a 24/7 city, not just a city that activates at market or showtime. And little by little, I think the political climate here is changing, and it's how do you kind of break down the walls so that we're one community and not factions. And I think that what we're able to do, to John's point, what we're able to do here is amazing, and there are great restaurants, and there's the Bean and Stock Furniture Library, which is one of the best design libraries in the world. And it's a city where if you dig a little bit, it's real easy to come in here and say, all I see is a Zaxby's and fast food and, tumbleweeds. But if you dig a little bit, and I think that us being editors, we're so lucky that whether it's being in Moscow or High Point, we are able to find fun. And we were at the Pioneer Art Festival 2 weekends ago in downtown High Point, and we bought this amazing watercolor of the Krispy Kreme. And again, you can find, who would have thought that Krispy Kreme would have translated as a great watercolor sketch. And that's the idea, keep your eyes open, because you never know where you're going to find colors, you're going to find experience, you're going to find, we're kind of interested in these two tables here and saying, how could we translate that? I would probably have painted it color, but it's, keep your eyes open, that you never know where you're going to find inspiration. You never know, and it doesn't have to be, for us, good design is about being expressive, it doesn't mean expensive. So we're lucky enough that when we go to London sometimes, if we're not staying at the apartment that we keep, we stay at the Savoy or whatever. But I have equally a good time staying at, we do a lot of road trips, the motel, driving to Florida, because you never know what you're going to see. Right. I think it's good to see, for us it's very much about seeing America. A lot of people just think that America is New York and LA, and Chicago.
Well.
And I like to see
Right. Well, I think
everything in between, because you really get a good range. And I think, to go to Target once a week and see what's trending, how they're speaking to the consumer is really important.
Excellent. What advice would you give to our students here on High Point University's campus that are interested in getting to a job market similar to your all's job market?
Bust your butt. I mean, life is about not being handed anything. It is is about working harder than your boss.
There's a few students that need to learn that lesson here.
Okay. It's not about being entitled. It is about, my mom always said that, arrive an hour before your boss and stay 2 hours after. And I think it's about being proactive. It's about having a really strong work ethic. It's about, I buy the toilet paper and get coffee just as much as I would ask you to get coffee. Thank you, Patrick. And so people think that our lives are very glamorous, and we're always going to do parties in New York at MoMA or something. Well, when you run out of paper towels, who do you think's running to the store to buy that stuff? Me. And so it's about being humble.
I think, something I wish I had done is taking classes in business and accounting and
Yeah.
some of these things that,
We had to learn on the job.
yeah, I think people think, oh, I want to be in a creative field just because I don't need a business background, or I don't need, sort of these classes that I'm not really that interested in, and you really do need them. I think you may not be the one doing your bookkeeping, but you need to understand what the person who's doing it for you is doing.
Right,
Or
yeah.
you end up in serious
Yeah,
problems.
and right, we've had interior designer friends whose monies have been frittered away by accountants that they thought were. But I think it's about having to knowing how to read a P&L statement as well as knowing what paint color. So it's the idea of having that right brain, left brain duality, and thinking very much in terms of marketing and PR too, and telling a story that if we go into our project, like we're renovating our home here in High Point, what's the video component? How do we photograph it all throughout the process so that we have the book content? Which magazine do we parse it out to? So I think it's about,
It's about that, but it's also, I think you also have to think outside the box and realize that just because an industry is done or is traditionally has been done a certain way doesn't mean that that's really how it has to stay, or that. And what you're seeing happen in the design world is, it was a very much an industry where it was very, without a designer you didn't get access to certain things. Well, that's changed with the internet, and it's changed with the way the world has changed in terms of the global economy. So pretty much everything is available anywhere to anybody whenever they want it. They just have to figure out how to get to it, which means as a designer,
how do you navigate that changed landscape? And I think that John and I both very much in terms of the box. Our box is big and pink and orange, so it's not the box that you might expect. So when you think outside of it, it's still pretty out there. But if it ain't broke, break it. And go through life and challenge the status quo, challenge the norms, rethink your business model, rethink how things operate, rethink what you were told. Don't expect. Don't take things at surface level. I think a lot of people, Auntie Mame in the great movie said, life is a banquet and most poor bastards are starving to death. And I think if you go through life with your eyes open, and if you're positive and you're excited and you find inspiration in everything you do, most people don't do that. I think that we wake up every day and kind of excited for the adventure, and the adventure might be leading you guys and going and arranging pillows for a couple of hours and hanging paper towel holders literally in our bathroom, and that's fun too. And enjoy the ride. Have chapters, that as John said, we never necessarily thought we would be interior designers, and now we are. And we never thought we are, we did. And we are having as much fun, more fun in High Point because it's a new chapter.
That's great.
And people have been very warm and welcoming. I think life is about chapters, and it doesn't mean that once you have 2.5 kids, you're stuck. Try something new.
Oh, good. No, that's what my parents told me.
Right, try something new. And again, it's about really, I think, having chapters and different. This will be one more chapter in life, and I'll have 6 more.
My parents tell me all the time, Patrick, once we had you and Grady, our fun chapters ended. Yeah.
Right. That's why we have dogs.
Right.
My children, right, yeah.
But I thought that was really interesting how you were talking about how, appreciate what the bookkeeper is doing, so you have a better understanding. I would think that would only make you, how could that do anything but make you a more effective leader and whatnot? Because, once you have a better understanding for what your bookkeeper is doing and whatnot, then it's like, well, not only would you know how to do it yourself, but it's like I was saying, it would just make you a more effective leader.
But I'm gonna just,
yes.
like every week we have meetings with our web person to talk about metrics and SEO. That I want to know just as much about what's trending on our site, where my client base is coming to, and what they're gravitating towards. on our on our website, or why certain Facebook posts are speaking to the consumer, and what is it about my hashtags that I've been tweaking. So I think for us, it's about every element, whether it's accounting, whether it's social media, whether it's looking at our electrical bill. I mean, I think it's all of those things.
And it's interesting too, because if you look in there, I mean, as a business, there's design is still, you have people who are of a certain age who have always done it a certain way and are not willing to change. And then you have others who have slowly been changing. But it's fascinating to see some of the much older designers who have been in the business since before I was around, who have picked up on social media and some of these other things, and they're saying, okay, I may be in my 70s or whatever, but I need to evolve just as much as somebody who's coming out of school needs to evolve.
And I think it's very much looking at Joan Rivers as a model and saying, she's been relevant for 40 years, but she was probably more relevant when she passed away at 81 than she was in her 50s. She was more with it, she was cooler, she looked better. I mean, everything about her was to be 81 and to be that engaged in life and to have that much presence and to be that relevant, and she could talk
But
about
also, in terms of relating it back to what we're talking about here, she wasn't just a stand-up comic. She
Right.
had all these other business ventures
Right.
that were all tied into what her core business
She made all her money from QVC and selling jewelry. So, you think that she was coming from, E-Entertainment. Well, actually, the money was coming from QVC. So again, right, that idea of having a pie chart that is divided into categories where everything is playing off each other, and she's using the television presence to also build Joan Rivers Worldwide, or whatever it was called.
Okay, excellent. Michael?
Tell us, what would you say was the most interesting story from your work experience so far?
Give us a little more story. Do you have a story?
We can hear multiple.
I have a dirty story, but I'm going to tell you that. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I think you just have to be
Open. Oh, I think truth is stranger than fiction. I think as
Yeah.
you go through life, you have moments where you kind of say, God, who would have ever expected that story to happen? Or, for me, I left Niche Media. I was editor of Gotham and Hamptons when I was at the Costume Institute, and I was dancing next to Linda Evangelista. Diana Ross is performing, Black Tie, and the tickets were $25,000 or whatever. And I was like, what? Life, for the kids in Tampa, Florida, I can kind of, I feel like that project ended, the editor of those magazines, because it couldn't have gotten better than that. It was kind of, what am I doing here? With Tom Ford sitting across from me, and it's I was kind of like, okay, I can leave this project now. I did it. I had I was making quite a bit of money and having an assistant and signing privileges, all these fancy restaurants and etro sport coats, but crazy. And I said, what, done, because I think life is about it's about chapters, and it's about once you're bored, or if you can't get any better than that. I kind of had an epiphany and said, I'm ready to move on. And so I think you can kind of gauge situations, and I think John and I have adventures. Life is about adventures, and we have wacky moments all the time, and we meet wacky people and wonderful wacky people, and it's just really fun. I think that we really go through life, and whether we're very much independent operators too. That when we go to India, we'll go to we'll just run off to the bazaars for a day, and they actually everyone speaks most people speak English in India, so it's you can be out in the middle of nowhere, or China. When we go to China, we'll go off in flea market hopping. You just use your phone to show them what you want to pay for and what they want to pay for, and they plug in. You put 6 and they say 7, and you go back and forth. And I think it's about creating your own path, and you never know where you're going to have. We meet famous people and non-famous people, and everyone's really interesting.
I mean, we've met traveling. We met a woman from Florida, Ruth, who was like in her.
We were on a cruise, and we were sailing from Dubai to Athens, and she was in her 90s, and she was traveling on her own, and she had the most wonderful stories to tell. That when she was in her 1920s, when her family took her to the south of France, and she was hanging out with F. Scott Fitzgerald, and the gifts that he had given her, and just and again, just this wacky, wonderful person that you wouldn't expect to meet. And a Jewish woman from Miami who's catching a cruise in Dubai, sailing past Oman, where we're stopping in Oman and all these Middle Eastern countries, and her family was in the textile business. And I think surround yourself with people of all age groups, because you're going to learn.
I think be open, because you never know, that person who is 90 and you just happen to meet could really be somebody who
Yeah, I think there's so much wisdom out there, and again, don't stay in your own little box. We have friends who are in their 80s and friends who are in their 20s, and you learn from them. And I think for us, like we're so into music, so it's like to our system, like push the boundaries in terms of what is it, who's the new two-door cinema club, like. But then we also listen to Boston Deary, who just passed away, who was in her 90s. I think it's that idea of you never know when you're going to have a wonderful moment, and life is about moments.
Right. That's great. That's great.
Are we talking more than most of you?
No. This is great. Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right.
Tell us about more about some of your successes in that sort of thing.
Well, I think life is about, there are a lot of fails, and I think if you learn from your fails and you pick yourself up and you dust yourself off, that's, I think we make really educated decisions. We put a lot of time into our decisions. So, our fails aren't epic, but they are.
No, but I think we've had certain situations which have led us to change certain ways we do business where we've had clients. You go into it thinking one thing, they seem perfectly normal, they seem perfectly enough, and then you get into the project
And they're crazy.
They're crazy. They don't want to pay their bills. They don't want to do certain things. So I think you kind of have to adjust as you go along too, and I think that.
So we've shifted some of our business models in terms of how we operate with clients. So I think that for every two successes we have, there's usually something's coming along down the pipe where you're like don't take it for granted because you wake up and your tire will be flat. So enjoy the ride, and I think it's about navigating the waters and changing the way you operate based on what you're seeing happening out there.
Because I think everything is
very fluid. Life is fluid and it's very organic. It's not black and white.
And with the internet and global access and all of this interaction globally anymore, things change in a minute. And I think you have to be able to adjust what you're doing and how you're doing it, or be open to the idea of adjusting.
And you never know. To a success, we were having dinner last year in Moscow with the editor-in-chief of Architectural Digest Russia, and she said, I had just reached out to her through a friend, and graciously she agreed to go to dinner with us, and she said, I've been a huge fan of your work for years. And I'm thinking, how the heck are we, on the radar of the editor-in-chief of Architectural Digest Russia? And she went back through and she was able to talk about several of our projects, and it was so, I think that was such a we were so humbled and flattered that we're registering in, when we in China, we have a big fan club in China, curiously. And that's very much one of our goals is to be global. Like we want to speak to Americans certainly, but I also want to be big in China and India and some of the BRICS countries. To kind of always be open. Don't think your world is your world isn't steady. The world is global. Don't burn bridges because you never know when that bridge will come back and bite you. And I think you learn from your, I think you learn from your I wouldn't say they're failures. I would say you learn from your missteps, and if you can change the way you operate.
But the thing is, sometimes those missteps are totally out of your control.
Yeah, and you learn from it.
And so
You're like, wow, I didn't think that the client would ever have gone that way, but I learned from that. So I'm going to next client situation. I'm going to realize that there could be a left turn that you didn't see, and so how do you keep it on the straight and narrow? It's excellent.
What is, I guess, the most enjoying part of your job, would you say?
I think that it's always different.
It's very project driven.
One day we could be designing patterns for a new fabric collection. Another day it could be designing color palettes for a material product. It's not the same thing every day. I don't wake up and go to an office and sit at a desk and do the same thing every day.
That's what everybody's been telling us. I don't sit at a desk every day.
And I did do that early on in my life. And I think that was a good learning experience, but it also taught me that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life.
Right.
So,
when I was editing Niche Media, I sat behind my desk and I ran a big staff, and we didn't travel at all because I was going to change. I was running a monthly and a weekly and other monthlies all over the country, and so I was basically changing my desk. And we didn't travel at all. So when I left Niche Media, it was very much how do we get back into that idea of traveling again, whether it's a road trip or it's one of these more far-flung trips. But yeah, I think it's very much project driven. It's very fresh. Every day is a new adventure. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, I would say there's not one thing that's always the same. And it could be, we could be sourcing product for something. I mean, it could be,
Yeah, my parents actually think we work too hard, which is nice. I guess I have a work ethic.
well, I think,
But they don't understand that there's no separation between my life and my personal life and my business.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm going to, when I'm sitting there and they think I should be at the beach, I'm actually working. And I'm at the beach, but I'm working at the beach or whatever. And they're like, you can't shut off your machines, and I don't, because I love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can say, hey, I can be sitting on a beach with a pina colada in hand and working, and I can look, and I can run
Well, I
down
think
and
that's
take a
part
quick
of
swim
it.
and then come back. That's great. I don't want to be sitting on a beach for 3 days. Like, to me, that's not my idea of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can be sitting on a beach for 3 days and working and reading magazines and catching up on stuff I need to do, then life is good.
yeah, I think you probably have to decide what it is you want in terms of a job and a career and all these things. Because if you are the type of person who wants to find, like, you want 2 weeks off every year, then maybe doing something on your own is not the right.
Right. Or if it's all about money, for us, it's not about, money gives you freedom, but it's not about the money. It's about the engagement. It's about having fun. So for me, it's not about the stuff anymore. I mean, if you look at my guy, Subaru out there that has 175,000 miles on it, and I've had a Range Rover and I've had all that crap,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not about that stuff. It's about, jeans bought at JCPenney, shoes from Target. This is from Savile Row in London.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about life. Life is about the fun. I think if I did make a lot of money, I would use a lot of that money to do fun things with my friends. Like we would say we rent a house in Maine every year or Tuscany every year, and you get yourself over there. And when you get over there, we have a chef that you can take a meeting if you want to stay for dinner, great, or you want to go to town or whatever. But it's not about the stuff. It's about life is about giving back. It's about getting on charities. It's about being engaged in the community. It's not about the trappings. And we have friends who make so much money and they're trapped in their lifestyles. They have houses in the Hamptons and staff and stuff, and their life is so complicated.
Track, that's interesting.
And I think we have a friend who's a very big event planner in New York in his life, and the amount of money coming in every month is far less money. It's a lot of money. It's less money than he puts out every month. And I think I don't want to get trapped. I want to be able to pick up and go and to enjoy it and not say that I have to. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses and saying I have to have the best car, the fanciest car, and the biggest house.
Well, I think that's true of that's true of what you do in business and how, I think if you run a bit, if you have an interior design business and you say, I want to keep up with X, Y, and Z designer, or I want to be like that designer in Hollywood, or I want to be like that designer on TV, you're never going to get to that point. You have to do your own thing.
Create your own path.
And you might get there if you create your own path, but if you try and do it by,
You do the same thing.
you can't.
How do you sell that?
Right.
How do you sell what somebody already else is selling? Right. You need the distinguishing factor. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Would you guys like to give a shout out to your families, your friends, coworkers, and people at High Point and our students as well?
We love being in High Point, and I think that having High Point University here is such an amazing addition to the community. And it's amazing what we're talking about what he's done here in the last 9 years, and I'm looking forward to seeing High Point University becoming even more part of the community here, because I think High Point itself is in such a state of flux, and it's a city that we're hoping to become something that is active every day, and it is, what is brand High Point? We think it should be perhaps a creative hub, and how can High Point University and High Point work together even more closely to have more synergies and connections, and so the High Point University kids say, hey, I want to stay here, I want to build a business here, and we've been so lucky that we've really been adopted by our friends here at High Point. We are loving the ride. So we also travel a lot, so that people still like us when we come back. We're still shining, like we're a good date.
But that's, I think that's a big part of it too. It used to be if you were at, say, like High Point and you were in New York or you were in LA, and you lived in a place like High Point, you were kind of stuck. But now it's a global world.
Right.
People travel. People.
You can live anywhere in the world.
You can live anywhere.
Create your dreams.
And
And
create.
so why not create them in High Point where it all exists? And I can go to Greensboro Airport, which is a fabulous airport, and I can pull up to the curb, and there are orchids, and they're nice to me, and I can go to New York for the weekend, or I can go to London, or I can go wherever. And I think it's, create a base. But I think, living in High Point, it's amazing to see the talent here. And it's great to see that people are really engaged and excited about how can we take the city. Winston-Salem and Greensboro 15 years ago had nothing going on. And it takes a visionary to really transform a city. And to see what's happened at High Point University, if a little bit of that magic dust rub off on the city itself, and create the jobs so that poverty starts declining. As the poverty declines, the drug problems will decline, and to see somebody who will play that role of CEO of High Point, the city, and come up with a 10-year plan. Because it's an amazing walking city, but we walk and people go 65 miles an hour in 35-mile-an-hour zones.
I saw your post about that the other day.
That's my dig. Drive slower. I mean, for Harvard University's kids, I'm like, really? But I think we're really excited to be not only part of the community in the fact that we're owning a store here, an office / retail space / but
But I think even going back to that idea, like if you go back 80 years in the interior design world, people had storefronts that you went to, and everything comes full circle, ultimately. And I think we're back to that stage where the way you differentiate yourself is you have to have a calling card that people can physically experience.
we were up in New York last week for the Home Shopping Network Partner Summit, and every year they bring together all their partners being the vendors. So it was Little Potatoes like us, and then it was Joy Mangano, who sells the Huggable hangers and makes, sells $50 million worth. And
Who's going to be made?
Jennifer Lawrence is making a movie about her right now. It'll be out next year. So it was an amazing range, and they had people speaking such as the former president of Interscope Records, the former CEO of Saks Fifth Avenue. A real amazing, and it's very much about disruptive retail. And disruptive is getting used perhaps a bit more. It's it's really on the people are using it.
Well, I mean, I think we were specifically talking about retail, but I think it applies to anything anymore.
Yeah, and they were saying that basically what we're doing with HSN is we're delivering the retail experience of what Marshall Fields or the great department stores 100 years ago were delivered, but we're just offering it on different platforms being web-based, television-based, very responsive retail where you're going to get that product within, you're not going to get like Foot Locker where you order it by 10 a.m. and you get it by 2 p.m. But you're going to get it within a day or two. And so we're going to give you the great customer service that if you want to return it, you're going to have wonderful people that you're going to speak to. We're going to put Jason and John, who are going to really push your boundaries with color and pattern. We don't want to give you white sheets. We don't want to give you beige sheets. We're going to give you sheets that have 46 patterns and actually push it even further. So that they're giving the lady what she doesn't know she wants. And so I think it's about being disruptive in your life.
And by doing that, they're creating a customer base
They're so loyal.
yeah, and will keep coming back to them.
Right.
That looks to them to do that for them. And I think that's the I would say one of the things that I've learned in doing this for all these years is that people may tell you they want something, but you have to dig deeper because they really want something else. And it's your job to push them to get to that.
Move the needle. And I think moving the needle means moving the needle in life, moving the needle in what you do, and moving the needle in the city that you live in, moving the needle in your business, and creating new models. Nothing's new, but yet if you can kind of think outside of that box, as John was saying, and try something new, that if you made an educated decision and say, hey, I'm not going to, this isn't the worst thing I ever did, you're going to succeed. And you're going to succeed locally, you're going to succeed nationally, and you're going to succeed internationally. I think you need to really look at the world as being a global experience, and how do you parse out whatever you're selling or your business acumen through various channels and various platforms and various geographies.
That's excellent. Well, thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks for having us. It's been quite fun.
Yes.
So,
Thank you so much. And be sure to listen to Mike and Slane at night on Friday nights from 8 to 10.
Listen in.